Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best junglers for Season 5 patch 5.7. But before I get into the video, I just want to talk a little bit about the Cinderhulk changes that went down this patch. So rather than having 350 health on the item, it's now down to 300, and it also costs 50 more gold for you to purchase it. And I really don't think that this matters too much. I still think that we're going to be seeing the tank junglers in this patch. Taking 50 health off of the item and making it worth 50 more gold isn't really that big of a nerf in my opinion, and I definitely do think that tank junglers are still going to be viable, even though the item did get a little nerf. So first up on my list, I have a Moo Moo. Prosto Moo Moo, he has great CC with his Q and his ultimate. He also has pretty solid engage with his Q, and his ultimate is pretty game changing. If you can land your ultimate on multiple targets in a team fight, then as long as your team follows up, you're probably gonna have a very good chance at winning the fight. He also has a lot of build paths. When I'm playing a Moo Moo, I never have one build that I do every game. You shouldn't have the same build for every champion every game, but I find that a Moo Moo is a lot more versatile when it comes to item builds. You can either go full AP Moo Moo if you're like really far ahead of the opponents. If you're snowballing pretty hard, then you can pick up some AP items, and if you aren't doing too well, then just going full tank is really viable as well on a Moo Moo. So I really like that you do have the option of either building AP or just tank on him. And he does also have strong clear speeds with his AoE damage, and he also has percentage health damage from his W, which is really good considering that there are a lot of tanky champions being played lately. Some cons to Moo Moo are he doesn't have any mobility unless he uses his Q to a camp, but that's not the most reliable escape, and he also is somewhat skill shot reliant with his Q. Next up on my list, I have Vi. So Prosto Vi, she does have pretty strong clear speeds in the jungle because of her W and because of her E as well, which she can use as an auto attack reset. She's also a great duelist because of her percentage health damage and also because of her strong CC. She's also a bruiser, so she can build, I usually like to go 1 or 2 AD items on Vi, and then I just go full tank after that, and it works really well. And she also does percentage health damage, like I said, with her W, which is really good in this tank meta right now. Her ultimate is also pretty easy to land. It really doesn't take much skill. All you gotta do is point and click on whoever you are targeting, which makes it really nice to just lock down a target in team fights. Like, if you're trying to lock down the AD carry, all you gotta do is press R and then they're CC'd. And as long as your team follows up, the chances of you bursting down that champion is pretty high as well. And because of her strong CC, she's got really strong level 6 ganks. Some cons to Vi are her Q can be hard to land if the opponents are juking you or they do have flash up, and she does require some communication. When I'm playing Vi, I find that sometimes I'll use my ultimate, I'll go in, I'll find a nice pick on the enemy AD carry, but my team won't follow up, so you do have to ping out when you're engaging, and you gotta be careful that you're not like totally engaging on the back line when your team isn't there, because even though you might find a nice pick, if your team doesn't follow up, then it's really not going to be worth it. Next up, I have Gragas. So Prosto Gragas, he's got very strong ganks pre-6 and at level 6 because he's got really strong CC. He also has percentage health damage with his W, which makes him a great pick in this meta. And he's got mobility as well with his E, which is a really big pro to him as well, which is something that a Moo Moo doesn't have. And he also is a pretty strong duelist in the early game, to be honest, because his W does percentage health damage, and it does a ton of damage in the early game. So if you're going up against someone like a Nautilus or a Zac or one of those tank junglers, then you're pretty much going to win the duel every single time. A con to Gragas he is pretty skill shot reliant. His ultimate can be hard to land, and it definitely is one of the harder abilities to land in the game in my opinion, because it could work against you sometimes. You can end up knocking the enemy away and saving them instead of knocking them towards you, so it does take time to learn in my opinion. Next up on my list, I have Rexi. So Prosto Rexi, she has very strong ganks. Once she does hit level 3, wherever you do gank, I find that I'm at least going to be able to burn the enemy's flash because her ganks are just so strong with her burrow and then with her knock up from her W. She also has great mobility because of her E, and she has a very nice passive as well. You can spot enemies out really nicely, and it makes her a really good pick against Shaco, or Shaco, however you want to pronounce it, because he can never get away from you as long as you are in your burrowed form, because you're going to be able to see where he's moving. And if you are looking for a counter to Shaco or Shaco, then I would definitely recommend trying out Rexi. She's also a pretty strong duelist because of her knockup and because of the true damage from her E and her Q as well. She's also one of the strongest split pushers in the game because of her Q, and then once she gets the Ravenous Hydra, which I would recommend doing on her for solo Q, it makes her just a really strong split pusher. And she can also bypass wards really easily because of her E. Some cons to Rexi are she does fall off in the late game, I find, and she does need to have strong early game ganks, or she needs to pull off a strong early game to be effective, because I find if you don't have a strong early game as Rexi, then she becomes kind of useless. So number 1 on my list for patch 5.7 is Sejuani. Prosto Sejuani, she has one of the strongest team fights in the game because of her ultimate and because of her very strong CC. She also has surprising damage as well. I always like to pick up the Haunting Guise as Sejuani because it just adds that little bit of damage, which is really nice. She's also got great mobility with her Q, and she also does percentage health damage with her W. She also has very strong level 6 ganks. Wherever you do gank as Sejuani, she's kind of like a Vi where you're pretty much guaranteed to at least blow the enemy summoners if you do gank, and you're pretty much gonna pick up a kill as long as you can land your ultimate and you can get your Q and your CC off on the opponent. One con to Sejuani she does have a weaker first clear. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Volibear. Volibear is definitely a pretty strong pick with the Cinderhulk item. I don't have him on my list because I don't like how he's easily kited. Like, if the enemies are smart, then they'll save their CC abilities for whenever he's using his Q to engage, and then he'll never be able to get onto a target unless he like flash Qs them. So I don't think he's the most viable pick in every single game, but if the enemies don't have a ton of slows and CC, then he can be pretty effective. Next up, I have Hecarim. So Hecarim, he's stronger in the top lane, but he is still a pretty strong jungler because he's got strong ganks, especially when he does hit level 6. So if you just don't want to play Hecarim in the top lane and you're feeling like playing him in the jungle, then I would definitely recommend it. Next up, I have Zac. So Zac is a stronger pick now because of the Cinderhulk item. He's also got great CC with his E, his Q, and his ultimate, and he can pull off some really nice ganks in the early game. He can pull off ganks from places that a lot of junglers can't, like, for example, in the bottom lane, where the Tribush is, he can sit a little bit, in between the lane and the Tribush. He can sit there, charge up his E, and jump into lane, and if the opponents are pushed out if they're pushed out far enough, then you're gonna be able to get a nice engage on them. So if you're looking for a tanky jungler with some pretty good CC, then I would definitely recommend trying out Zac. Next up, I have Skarner. So you guys might be a little bit surprised about this pick, but with Righteous Glory being such a strong item and it working really well with Skarner, I think he's a much stronger pick now, because once you do get Righteous Glory on Skarner, you're going to be able to get those engages off and you're going to be able to get your ultimate off on the opponent. So I do think he is a much stronger pick with that item, and I would definitely recommend building the item on Skarner if you are playing him, because that's one of the strongest items in the game for him, in my opinion. Next up, I have Nautilus. So Nautilus is one of the strongest CC champions in the game, having 4 CC abilities. So if you're looking for a strong CC tank who is a really good peeler, and he's also got great engage as well with his Q and his ultimate, then I would definitely recommend trying out Nautilus. And last but not least on the honorable mentions, I have Maokai. So Maokai is one of my personal favorites for sure for the jungle because he's got pretty strong clear speeds. He's also one of the best champions in the game to build Righteous Glory on because it just makes his engages really strong with his W, and he can get to the back line while using that active on the item. So if you're looking to play Maokai, I would definitely recommend playing him in the jungle because he's got great clears, great sustain, and once he does pick up Righteous Glory, he becomes a really strong team fighter. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.